Hare Krishna. So continuing our discussion on the culture of hearing. Yesterday we concluded by speaking about two categories of listeners, superior and inferior. Each we saw was of four varieties. How many of you were not here yesterday? Several. So you can catch up by hearing about those four categories of superior listeners and four categories of inferior listeners. There are actually many other categories and subcategories of all of these. And if you look at nature or look at things around you, I'm sure you can find very adequate, appropriate and humorous comparisons to the various types of listeners. For example, I remember many years ago when we were in the ashram, we used to have a drama on various types of japa done by devotees. And so we observed how different devotees did japa, and then we made some drama out of that. And it was quite funny. So you can also observe in nature and see the different, by giving examples, and you know how devotees hear in the class, how they should hear and how they should not hear. Both examples we see. So we can give some nice comparisons. There are comparisons given to bumblebees, to asses, and so on. We also heard about the two types of listeners in terms of those who only want Krishna and those who want some material opulence. And we also saw the compatible and incompatible combinations of listeners and speakers. For a compatible combination, both have to be either wanting only Krishna or both have to be wanting material enjoyment. If you're one from one category, the other from the other category, there is some frustration. But of course, ideally, we should have both from the first category, which means the listener as well as the speaker should want to only progress in Krishna consciousness and want nothing else. No material aspirations to achieve by hearing and chanting about Krishna. So the process of hearing is so important. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that in his propagation of Bhagavad Dharma, he declared that the hearing process is very important. If anyone, even the most ordinary or fallen person, takes to the process of hearing about Krishna, then that person can actually be delivered. Now, Srila Prabhupada in one of his purports laments that unfortunately, even though such a simple remedy is available for making your life perfect, still there are people who don't take advantage of it. And Srila Prabhupada refers to one verse from the Bhagavad Gita. Namam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya pahirtajnana asuram bhavam ashritaha. In which Lord Krishna says that there are four types of people who don't surrender to me, four kinds of people who perform impious activities, miscreants. Dushkritina means miscreants, those who perform bad activities. And one of them is called the Naradhama. Nara Adhama, the lowest among humanity. Now, Srila Prabhupada in his purport in that verse describes the Naradhamas as those who may be socially, politically, economically very developed, very sophisticated, very polished, but they have no affinity to religious principles. They have no interest in dharma. They have no interest in hearing about spiritual development. no interest in hearing anything Krishna conscious. So Srila Prabhupada says that is truly unfortunate. So those people who, even when given a golden opportunity to perfect their lives by such a simple process as just hearing about Krishna, they refuse to do so. So that is very, very sad. Actually, the process of hearing about Krishna and becoming self-realized is something we also discussed yesterday. We saw that chart yesterday. How one progresses to various stages simply by hearing, and also then one attains perfect knowledge of Krishna and the science of Krishna consciousness. In the Nectar of Devotion, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami has compared the process of hearing about Krishna to be like a remedy for a person who is bitten by a snake, a poisonous snake. Now, I don't think many of you have experience of snake bites. I hope none of you have ever been bitten by a snake. But maybe some of you have heard of others being bitten by snakes. Maybe you've seen them. So when one is bitten by a poisonous snake, then one becomes unconscious for some time, depending on the type of snake and the type of poison and so on. And then one needs to be revived. Nowadays, modern medicine, we have antidotes, and they inject you something and maybe you revive. It counteracts the snake poison. But in the olden days, in the Vedic culture, it was very common to have two methods to remove the poison from the person who was bitten by a snake. One was Aushadhi, some herbs, and the second was mantra. So by reciting and hearing certain mantras, it was possible to relieve that person of the effects of the snake bite. So much so that the person would become normal in a very short time. There is a proverb that is quite nice. Sarpaha kruraha khalaha kruraha. Sarpat krurataha khalaha. Sarpaha means a snake. Khala means an envious person. Krura means cruel. So a snake can sometimes be cruel in the sense that it can strike you for no reason, no provocation. You're just walking along, suddenly comes from behind and bites you for no reason. So a snake, only an envious entity can do that. So a snake is considered a very envious entity because it can bite you for no reason. Other animals, they attack you when they feel threatened. If you attack them or they feel somehow that you are going to attack them. And so there are two kinds of people who are like that, entities. One is the snake, Sarpaha Kruraha. The second kind of entity is the envious person who's called a Khalaha. Khalaha Kruraha. But Sarpat Krurataha Khalaha. But the envious person is more dangerous than the snake. The envious human being is more dangerous than a snake. Why? Mantroshadhi vashaha sarpaha. By mantras and by herbs, a snake can be, the poison of a snake can be counteracted. A snake can be kind of made to sit quietly and it won't bite. But Kalaha kena nivaryate, but what remedy is there for an envious person? Yeah? No herbs for him, no mantras work for him. You may chant anything you like and you may do anything. Like for Duryodhana, no remedy. Even Krishna tried so much, but to no avail. So meaning, the point I'm trying to make is that the idea that there are people, recipients of snake bites, could get cured by hearing mantras. When these people heard the mantras, certain types of mantras, they would get revived. Srila Prabhupada, in one lecture, was speaking about a friend of his called Dr. Ghosh. Dr. Ghosh had told him that when Dr. Ghosh was a medical college student in Lucknow or somewhere, one time there was, in the campus, there was many incidents of snake bite. And it was a medical college. So everybody was very alarmed. And maybe in those days, in the early 20th century, they didn't have so many powerful anti-snake, medicines. So the authorities were in a quandary about what to do. Then somebody had the idea to call the snake charmer. Now somehow or the other, India is is known in the popular imagination in the West as a land of snake charmers. Yes. So when people want to speak, disparagingly about India, they'll show a picture with a snake charmer and so on, and then snakes like that. So they called the snake charmer. And the snake charmer started playing his instrument, and all the snakes, the two couple who were all here, they came. And then they disappeared with him, they went away with him. He was able to control all the snakes just by the sound, and he was chanting some things. So he took them away, and everybody then started glorifying the snake charmer. But then some skeptics started saying, no, these snakes that he got were not the poisonous ones. So they all went to, somebody said, let's go and test it out. So they went to the snake charmer's residence. And they said, we don't think you've done anything great, because these snakes must have been unpoisonous snakes, so they would have no harm. So then the snake charmer opened his basket and let the snakes out. And all these medical students ran helter-skelter, jumping over the walls, and they were... So he said, what happened? They are without poison, so why are you running away? He said, don't be scared, come back. Because so long as I am here, they will not bite you. I also have personal experience of seeing this. In one village in the state of Uttar Pradesh, when I had gone, because I knew somebody who hailed from that village, and he had arranged some programs for me. And there was a Hanuman temple, which is the only place where I could stay. So it was a one-room place, and then there was the temple in the campus. And the night that I stayed, at about midnight, there was huge tumult outside, screaming and shouting. So I was wondering what happened. I opened the door and saw a group of people, and a lady was being carried, and she was howling with pain. Then I asked what happened to this lady. They said she was bitten by a snake in the fields. So I said, why is it brought to Hanuman temple for mercy of Hanuman? He said, no, there's a snake. There's a person who drives away the snake poison just by chanting mantras. Now I had heard all of this in Prabhupada's lectures, but I had never seen it. So I was thinking, really, let me see what happens now. And he was a young man. He was carrying forward the tradition of his father. The father had been an expert. So he had some kind of a branch of some plant or tree or something. The lady had been brought practically on a stretcher. And she had really been screaming at the top of her voice. And then he started beating her with that little twig. And he was chanting all kinds of mantras. I was sitting close trying to hear what mantras he was chanting. But his pronunciation wasn't very good. But I could figure out with some words that he was chanting to Durga. I think it was some mantras or something to Durga Devi or Kali. And after 15 minutes, this lady got up and walked away. She had been carried in on a stretcher, and she was walking away. And like this, in the whole night, I couldn't sleep. There were so many cases coming in. Because that was the harvesting season. So the crops grow, So they go into the fields, and you can't see the snakes on the ground. So people get bit at that time. And then, very funny, I don't know if it worked or not, but that young man from the village who was the healer, so to speak, he was speaking on the phone, the mantra. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "This is from another state of Bihar. There's some patient, I'm doing that." So I don't know whether it worked or not. So in any case, the point is that by mantra, by sound vibration, by hearing of certain mantras, a person can be revived from snake bites. So, in the Garud Purana, it is mentioned that the state of the conditioned living entity in this world, those who are bound in the cycle of birth and death, is like that of a person bitten by a snake. Just as a person bitten by a snake is unconscious, similarly a person bitten by the snake of Maya he loses his or her spiritual consciousness. So it's as good as unconscious. And therefore, just as a person bitten by a snake can be revived by sound when that person hears certain mantras, similarly the person bitten by the snake of Maya can be revived by hearing Krishna Katha and by hearing Krishna Nam, which means the name of Krishna and the messages and pastimes of Krishna. So then that person awakens. Of course, you don't have to beat anything. You can just chant, and then gradually the awakening process is set in motion. So this is explained nicely by Rupa Goswami when he cites that. And he says, therefore, one must engage oneself more and more in hearing about Krishna so that we may awaken from this deep sleep into which we have been put under the influence of Maya. So it's a very serious process. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that one should submissively hear. Now, we have all heard from childhood this little witty analogy or example that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. What does it mean? That we should hear twice as much as we speak. But that is a rarely followed bit of wisdom, because people generally like to speak many times more than what they hear. And this is generally a cause of much problem, because people don't want to hear, they simply want to speak. And even when they hear people who don't have anything valuable to give. So the hearing process for us is very important. We must select the right kind of people, the right kind of association, the right kind of matter. We must desire Krishna. Now we'll look at some chart compared to yesterday based on what Suta Goswami says in the 44th verse of the 3rd canto. Basically, Suta Goswami says to the sages at Naimisharanya, see, I was fortunate enough to be in the assembly when Shukadev Goswami spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I heard the Srimad Bhagavatam with rapt attention from the great sage. And by his mercy, I was able to understand the Srimad Bhagavatam. And now I am able to repeat this message to you after having heard it and realized it. Now Srila Prabhupada makes many important points in that purport. He says, for example, that one must not hear from a professional reciter of Bhagavatam. One must not hear from persons who are indulging in sense gratification. One must also hear with attention, because Suta Goswami says, I heard with rapt attention. And yesterday there was some quotes here, I remember. There was some quote over there.
supposed to
Yeah, no, another one. There was another one. Yeah, he says, simply hearing is not all. One must realize the text with proper attention. That is from the same purport. And he says, one must hear with proper attention and with realization. And then he makes a very important statement, a couple of sentences, which I will suggest all of you memorize, if you can. Yes? So the idea is we must hear with rapt attention. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action unless one is pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So I've reversed the order and put it here. So if one is pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, then one's actions become pure. If one is pure in action, one's mind becomes pure. If one's mind is pure, then one can hear with rapt attention. Generally, when I interact with students, and even with adults actually, one of the most common complaints is, I can't concentrate. My mind keeps wandering when I'm sitting to study, then I think of something else, and I can't focus on anything for long. So what is the reason for that? Here it is. The incapacity to be wrapped in attention on anything is because of not having a pure mind, which in turn is because of not having pure actions, which in turn is because we don't eat purely, mate purely, sleep purely, defend purely. Otherwise, the rapt attention cannot come. So hearing has to be like that. That is the point Srila Prabhupada is making. Simple hearing is not all. One must realize the text. How does one realize the text? When one hears with attention. Have you heard of the great devotee called Tukaram? He was a great saint, and he worshipped the deity of Lord Vitthala, who is actually Lord Krishna. And he was a very poor man, materially speaking. But he engaged himself all day and all night in singing about Krishna, composing songs about Krishna, glorifying Krishna, speaking about Krishna. So one time he was called to speak and sing about Krishna. So he sat, and he was a musical speaker. So he would sing, he would speak, he would sing his own compositions in glorification of Krishna. So initially the hall was packed, and then he went on and on, he was warming up, and he became so absorbed in his own talk that he closed his eyes and he was as if in a trance. He was actually in a trance. And he was going on singing and speaking about Krishna. Now, time was passing. As time was passing, gradually, bit by bit, because everybody was not there as a devotee, as a pure devotee, so people started getting restless. In any class, if you notice, after a certain time is over, people start getting restless. Have you seen that? Maybe you have experienced it also. How does that manifest? In some fidgeting, in some restlessness, in looking at the clock, a watch, something like that. Or even in the mind, knowing that, oh, now after hearing this, if I fidget, everybody will look at me like that. But in the mind is there, but that's self-discipline. We have to be aware of that. So anyway, it's hard to sit like this for a long time. So one by one, people started leaving. And the evening drew on, it became night, and he showed no signs of stopping. He was going on and on and on, absorbed. Some people had been hearing, but they had exhausted their stamina for hearing. So they all went away. Finally, he opened his eyes, and he saw there's only one person sitting there looking like this. So Tukaram was very happy. He said, "Oh, you're hearing with rapt attention. You're the only person who's hearing. So I congratulate you because you've been hearing so nicely, with such attention." So the person folded his hands and said, "See, I don't want to be disrespectful, but don't misunderstand me to be a great devotee. I'm not. I wasn't hearing out of some taste. You see, the issue is that you are sitting on my blanket." "And until you rise, I cannot go because I need that blanket. So I've been hearing you, but not with rapt attention because my attention is on that blanket. So I want that blanket." So our hearing should not be like that. You know, in some of our temples, because in India, I don't know if it happens, maybe it happens to some degree in other places also, there are many people who come to the Sunday feast only for prasadam, because they get really nice prasadam. So they come for that. And so what the temple managements have done is they see many people who don't seem to be interested in hearing. They just come because they'll get some prasad. And you can make out who those people are. When you look at the audience, you can immediately spot them. Even if you're seeing them for the first time. Just by looking at them, you know, they're not here for hearing. So they started issuing coupons. Because what these people would do is they would come right at the end, just in time for prasadam. So the temple management started having a system of coupons. So you issue a coupon at the beginning of the lecture, first 10 minutes. And anyone who comes in that time gets the coupon, can take prasadam. Anyone who comes after that has to pay for the prasadam. So they tried it. But you know, people are smart. If they want to beat the system, they can always do it. So they started coming on time. What does it matter if I just have to sit for an hour? Even if I sleep there, nobody objects, so I just sit. So they sit there and they take the prasadam and they so they go away. So people come for various reasons, so they must be thinking when the lecture is going on, when is it going to get over? When is it going to get over? They're looking like that. And sometimes the speaker gives, some false starts to the end. He speaks in such a way that it gives an indication it's going to end, so these people are hopeful. And then the speaker has some renewed inspiration and he continues speaking out again. Yes? So hearing about Krishna is not to be done like that. Hearing about Krishna has to be done with rapt attention. Now I'll briefly discuss devotional service in the three modes of nature. This is from the teachings of Lord Kapila in the 3rd canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now Prabhupada mentions that devotional service is transcendental. It is pure. It is spiritual. But the modes of material nature are, as the term indicates, material. So how can devotional service be in the three modes? So Prabhupada said, devotional service is not in the three modes. The performer of devotional service is in the three modes. So when the devotee is in the mode of ignorance, then when the devotee performs devotional service, when such a devotee performs devotional service, then that devotional service is called devotional service in the mode of ignorance. When a devotee who's in the mode of passion performs devotional service, then that devotional service is called devotional service in the mode of passion, and so on. So when devotional service is performed by a person in the mode of ignorance, when he is violent, he is proud, he is angry, thinks himself better than all the other devotees, and so on. When he is exhibiting the symptoms of the mode of ignorance in a prominent way, and then does some devotional service, including hearing, then that's called devotional service in the mode of ignorance. And Prabhupada says, therefore, because devotional service is of 9 types, hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. So each of these 9 types can be in these modes. So you have hearing in the mode of ignorance, hearing in the mode of passion, hearing in the mode of goodness, etc. So when a person comes in a violent, proud and angry mood and is thinking himself to be the best devotee, sitting there, he's hearing about Krishna, but he's so proud from within. So that kind of hearing is hearing in the mode of ignorance. Similarly, when a person comes to hear about Krishna, thinking that I want to get some benefits from hearing, because I've heard that hearing about Krishna is a pious activity, and if I hear regularly, then maybe I'll be blessed by Krishna with some fame, some name, some opulence, some money and enjoyment and so on. So that is hearing in the mode of passion. Then there are those in the mode of goodness who don't have this kind of gross characteristic, but what they do want is to be freed from their karma. So they perform devotional service and offer that devotional service, offer the results of that to become free from karma. Mind you, their objective is not to please Krishna. They're not like those in the mode of ignorance and passion who are very gross when it comes to some material desire. They just want to be freed from material misery, these people in the mode of goodness. So to some degree they are pure, but they're not transcendental. The first 2 categories, the words used are bhinna drik and prithak bhavam. Means they have a separate interest from Krishna. Krishna wants us to hear about him so that we can become Krishna conscious and love him and please him. But if anyone has some other ideas, then that's called separate interest, bhinnadrik or prithak bhavam. So obviously, hearing in the mode of ignorance and in the mode of passion is hearing with a separate interest. But interestingly, even hearing in the mode of goodness is with a separate interest. Why? Because it is me that is at the center, not Krishna. I am hearing about Krishna because I want to be freed from misery. I want to be free from my karma and the karmic reactions. So hearing, as opposed to these 3 modes, has to be transcendental. That hearing which is done only to please Krishna, only for his satisfaction, and it is spontaneous. It is not done with any material motive. It is done in a submissive, eager spirit. That is real hearing. When the mood is proper, the attitude is proper, then the purity of the attention comes in, and the attention, the ability to pay attention comes in. So even if we do not have that spontaneous taste for hearing about Krishna in the beginning, we should keep on doing it. As we read in the Nectar of Instruction, just as a patient of jaundice is treated with sweet sugarcane juice, even though that patient cannot understand the taste of sugarcane juice, that patient perceives sweet sugarcane juice to be bitter because of the jaundice. But if he keeps on drinking the sugarcane juice, then the jaundice goes away. So similarly, when we come to the association of devotees and sincerely hear about Krishna, and even if there are desires we want to push them out of the mind and try to only hear for the sake of Krishna's pleasure, then gradually that spontaneous interest in hearing about Krishna manifests within the heart. And this itself is a beautiful topic. There are many instructions from Krishna in the 11th canto Srimad Bhagavatam, but we don't have time to go into all of that for now. But suffice it to say that the last two verses in this sequence, verses 11 and 12, speak about transcendental hearing. And this we will discuss now. So can we go to the next verse? This is spoken by Lord Kapila to his mother Devahuti. Two very beautiful verses that describe transcendental hearing, transcendental devotional service. So let us recite these two verses. Madguna shruti matrena Mai sarva guhashaye Manogatir avichinna Yatha gangam bhasom budhau Lakshanam bhakti yogasya Nirgunasya hyudahritam Ahaitukya vyavahita Ya bhakti purushottame One from the Prabhus, one from the Matajis. Please recite.
Madguna shruti matrena Mai sarva guhashaye Manogatir avichinna Yatha gangam bhasom budhau Lakshanam bhakti yogasya Nirgunasya hyudharitam Hetukya avyayahita Bhakti purushottame
Mataji's side.
Madguna shruti matrena Mai sarva
Guhashaye Manogatir avichinna Yatha gangam bhasom budhau Lakshanam bhakti yogasya Nirgunasya hyudharitam Ahaitukya vyavahita Ya bhakti purushottame. Translation. The manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows towards the Supreme Lord. Madguna, since Kapila Dev is an incarnation of the Lord, he refers to himself, my qualities, Shruti Matrena, simply by hearing which, of me, who am situated in everybody's heart. Guha refers here to the heart. In the innermost chambers of everybody's heart, the Lord is seated. Mano gatiravichhinna yatha gangam bhasom budhau. The mind spontaneously, avichinna, without any obstacles, moves towards the topics of towards my topics, narrations of my topics. Yatha, just as Ganga ambhasau, ambudho. Just as the waters of the Ganga, they flow towards the ocean. And even though there may be impediments in the way, but they bypass those impediments or cross over those impediments, and somehow they reach the ocean. We were discussing the swift-flowing Ganga the other day in the morning class. The word Ganga itself means she who flows swiftly. So the Ganga flows swiftly and naturally towards the sea. So similarly, the mind of one who is situated in transcendence, who is spontaneously attracted to Krishna, when that person hears the narrations of Krishna's topics, then his mind immediately flows towards those topics, disregarding anything else. This is a very important point. Lakshanam bhakti yogasya nirgunasya. So this is a characteristic of that bhakti yoga which is nirguna, which is beyond the three modes of material nature, which is transcendental. And it is done without any material motive and without any interruption. So this is transcendental hearing. This is the kind of hearing we want to be. The moment we hear anything about Krishna, we just go into a flow and our mind becomes absorbed in Krishna consciousness. There was a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Pundarik Vidyanidhi. He was very wealthy, extremely wealthy, and he would dress himself very opulently, he would live very opulently, he would chew betel nut, which a devotee is not supposed to do, and he would have perfumed oil in his hair, and he'd be sitting in royal style in silken cloth and cushions. And one time, Mukunda, another great devotee of Mahaprabhu, he took Gadadhar Pandit and said, "Come, let me take you to meet a great devotee." So Gadadhar was very eager to meeting any great devotee. So Mukunda knew Pundarik Vidyanidhi's greatness very well. And he knew that he was deliberately hiding his devotion by his display of wealth and sense gratification. That can't be imitated, of course. So when Gadadhar reached there, he was astonished to see Pundarik Vidyanidhi sitting like a king on a bed with silken cloth and cushions, and he was sitting with his feet up. And there's some fruit, he was eating it. And he was chewing betel nut, and he had some silver spittoons. And then he had his hair that was, with perfumed with oil and all sorts of, he had servants fanning him. And Gadadhar in his mind was thinking, Mukunda called me here to meet a great devotee. This doesn't look like a great devotee to me. And Mukunda smiled at him, and he understood what was going on in Gadadhar's mind. Mukunda was a good singer, apart from being a great devotee. So when he sang with devotion, it was very melodious, and it captivated the hearts of the devotees. So he sang a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, this is a nice pastime which requires a longer time to explain. He chanted the Aho Baki Yamstanaka Lakutam verse, which glorifies the fortune of Putana and glorifies the qualities of Krishna's mercy. So the moment Mukunda chanted that, Gadadhar Pandit, I beg your pardon, Pundarik Vidyanidhi had been busy with his so many other things. The moment he heard that, he went into ecstasy and he displayed all the symptoms of bhava. He fell off the bed onto the ground, he tore his clothes, and his hairs were standing on end, tears of ecstasy from his eyes, and Gadadhar Pandit was standing there stunned. And then he understood. So the real quality of a devotee can be understood when one sees a spontaneous attraction to hearing about Krishna. But mind you, these tears cannot be coming from material sentiment. There are many people who cry easily. For any little thing they cry, right? It's normal. We see so many times. People cry. So that doesn't mean that they've become exalted devotees because they started crying. Yes? The crying must come by genuine Krishna prema. And also those who falsely cry to make a show of spiritual advancement, that crying is also condemned. Prabhupada said that crying washes away the conclusions of the Vedas. One time there was a snake charmer. Since we're talking of snake charmers, why not have one? And when Haridas Thakur came there, the snake charmer was singing the glories of Krishna's subduing of Kaliya, the serpent Kaliya in Vrindavan. And Haridas Thakur went into ecstasy and he fell down. And he exhibited these symptoms after hearing the narration of Kaliya, of Krishna subduing Kaliya. And everybody came and touched his feet and and they started offering their respects to him. There was one envious person standing in the crowd. And that's a good way to get a lot of respect in the society. So I'll also start crying and pretend I'm a great devotee. So then the snake charmer continued his descriptions and he also he went crying. And then the snake charmer looked up and he immediately understood that this person was faking it. He took up a stick and started beating him in public. And that man protested, "Why are you beating me?" He said, when Haridas Thakur, this gentleman was crying, you all touched his feet. And I'm also crying when I'm hearing you, but you're beating me. He said, because he's real and you're just imitating. So, genuine symptoms of love will come in genuine devotees the moment they hear about Krishna. So this is called spontaneous hearing. And this is transcendental hearing. This is the goal of our life. Does it sound like an exaggeration? To develop this taste for hearing about Krishna unlimitedly, spontaneously, for no other purpose than to hear about Krishna. To develop love for Krishna. Srila Prabhupada, also when he went to Radhakund, when he was a young man, he was in his Grihastha ashram at that time. And his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, had taken many devotees from Calcutta to Vrindavan and Radhakund. And he was speaking on the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. For 1 month, every day he spoke on only that verse. Very philosophical. And many of the disciples, they started going here and there to take darshan here, darshan there. But Prabhupada, he was known as Abhay Charan at that time, Abhay Charan Aravinda. He just stayed put for all those 31 days. And he heard very carefully. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very pleased with that. And he said, I have noted this young man. He hears very attentively. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur noted that he would go places. Why? Because he was hearing attentively. One who hears attentively makes quick progress in Krishna consciousness. Undoubtedly. This is the secret of quick spiritual advancement. Can we have, what's the next slide here? Yeah. So a similar verse is spoken by Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, 10.18. After Arjuna has heard the narration of Krishna's opulences, Krishna says, Vistarenatmano yogam Vibhutim cha janardana Bhuyah kathaya triptirhi Shrinvato nasti me mritam. O Janardana, again, please describe in detail the mystic power of your opulences. I am never satiated in hearing about you, for the more I hear, the more I want to taste the nectar of your words. So we can follow in Arjuna's footsteps. Kathayaha triptirhi shrinvato na asti. I am not satisfied, or I'm satisfied but not satiated. I'm not satiated by hearing the nectar that is coming from you. The word amritam and is spoken here by Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport to that verse explains that Krishna Katha is like nectar. Nectar is called amrit in Sanskrit, amritam. And mritam. Mrita means to die, or that which is dead. Means not dead. So amrita means that which is immortal. Yes? So nectar, true nectar, should have two qualities. One, it should taste delicious. That's why when something tastes very delicious, we say, this is nectarian. It's nectar. The second quality is, it should make you immortal. That's a tough one. How can it make you immortal? Not just by immortal in this body, but it gets you free from the cycle of birth and death. That's the important thing. By hearing about Krishna, you become a pure devotee and then get free from the cycle of birth and death, and therefore you become immortal just by hearing about Krishna. Modern science makes pathetic attempts at immortality by extending your life by a few years by medical science and advancement. But what is the use of such extension of life? Real immortality means you have to get rid of this material body and take a spiritual body which will always exist, which will never be destroyed, which will never be destroyed. You know, you've heard the pastime of the churning of the milk ocean described in the Srimad Bhagavatam? The demigods and the demons were churning the ocean to get nectar. But that nectar is material nectar. It can make your body last for a long time, but not forever. So it is not true Amrita. It is not true. It cannot give you true immortality. So when Shukadev Goswami was about to speak Srimad Bhagavatam to King Parikshit, quietly the demigods approached Shukadev Goswami in a solitary place. Shukadev Goswami, we have a proposal for you. We want to give this pot of nectar, heavenly nectar. Please give this to King Parikshit and give us the nectar of Srimad Bhagavatam in exchange for that. And Shukadev Goswami drove them away. He said, how dare you compare the two nectars? That is material nectar. It is not real nectar. This is real nectar. So you have even committed an offense by comparing this. Therefore you don't deserve to hear it, to get it. So Krishna Katha is nectarian. The more you hear about Krishna, the more it appears sweeter and sweeter. Nitya Nava Navayamana, it appears fresh. So the sages at Naimisharanya therefore tell Suta Goswami, Vayam tuna vitrapyama uttama shloka vikrame yat shrinvatam rasagyanam svadu svadu pade pade. They say, my dear Suta Goswami, please don't stop reciting Krishna Katha. Because every time, the more we hear about Krishna from you, it is so wonderful. The narration is so nice. At every step, we're experiencing new spiritual tastes. Swadu, swadu, pade, pade, we're tasting the nectar at every step. So please don't stop it. King Parikshit also recognizes that. And he says, my dear Shukadev Goswami, please don't think that I am a king, I've been used to kingly comforts, and I won't be able to sit here without food and water for 7 days. Don't finish it up in a hurry. I want the real thing. I don't mind not eating. I don't mind not sleeping. I don't mind not drinking water. But now I have become addicted to hearing about Krishna, the nectar of Krishna's narrations from your lotus mouth. So please do not hesitate in speaking incessantly. And Shukadev Goswami is very pleased to hear that. And then speaks for 7 days consecutively. So that is our goal. That is a culture of hearing we want to inculcate in everybody. Srila Prabhupada mentions and cautions us, however, that we should not hear from professional reciters who have some material motive. And he quotes a famous verse, Vaishnava mukhodgirnam putam hari kathamritam shravanam naiva kartavyam sarpo cheshta yathapayaha. A snake, now we're talking of snakes, we'll talk some more of snakes. So, a snake with its poison, when it tastes milk, it poisons the milk. Now generally, milk is very nourishing. And if you drink it, it's got vitamins, it's got proteins, it's very healthy, good for the brain, good for the body. If it's pure milk. But if that same milk has now been touched by the poisonous lips of a serpent, that milk becomes poisonous. In the same way, Putam Hari Kathamritam, Hari Katha or Krishna Katha, narrations about Krishna are nectar. They're very nourishing spiritually. But one should not hear from the mouths of non-devotees, Vaishnava mukhodgirnam, that Katha should not emanate from the mouths of non-devotees. Why? Because it will have the same effect as the poisonous milk does. So even though Harikatha is pure, but by taking it or hearing it from a non-devotional person, it will have the opposite effect in our mind. Sometimes, however, there are rare cases, and I'll conclude with a little story. I couldn't resist it. One time there was a thief, and he had been out of business for a while, was desperate. So a desperate person does anything, goes anywhere. So he went into a place where Krishna Katha was going on. And one Brahmana, who was a professional reciter, he was reciting as a story for his livelihood. And some wealthy man, pious man, had called this Brahmana to do a recitation of Bhagavatam and Krishna Katha. So many people had assembled there. So this thief also slipped in. And the Katha was going on and on. It was taking some time. The Brahmana was going at great lengths to explain the many pastimes of Krishna. And this man was getting bored, but he was hearing. And looking at people, any wealthy people around, any, gold, any diamonds that he can see, who's there. And then suddenly the Brahmana started talking about, he had been speaking all along about Krishna. And he had been describing him. Now he came to a passage where Krishna's clothes were described, Krishna's eyes, Krishna's hair, Krishna's face, his smile, and then Krishna's ornaments, etc. were being described. So when he heard of Krishna's ornaments, the Kaustubh jewel and all that. And he started looking up, yes. Now here's something interesting, yes. So he started hearing with rapt attention because he had a lot of interest in that topic of diamonds and ornaments and stuff. So he was thinking, it looks like if I get these ornaments from Krishna, this boy, whoever he is, wherever he may be, I'm going to become wealthy. Enough of this daily anxiety. One big kill, and then I'll be free for life. So then he continued to hear, but he wanted to make sure that he wouldn't forget the slightest detail. Where to go to Krishna, where he's found, all of that. And the ornaments, the description, the earrings, the Makara Kundal, shark-shaped earrings, and so on and so forth. So he was hearing, engrossed, more than anybody else. Then the day's katha was over. The Brahmana retired to his residence. Now the thief at night broke into the Brahmana's house. The Brahmanas generally are not so courageous like that. So he got terrified. Oh, what happened? You're a thief. What do you want? I don't have anything with me. I've just got a little dakshina I got for today. No, I don't want your dakshina. He was looking for bigger things, not for some little dakshina. So he said, tell me, I'm looking for that young lad. So which lad? Krishna. So, Krishna, okay. So, I want you described that Kaustubha jewel, that shark-shaped earring, and so many ornaments, and those jewels. I want that. So the Brahmin was thinking, is he a crazy man? Is he what is he? What can I do? So he was thinking. So that man thief went on and said, I want to go to see this young man Krishna. Where is he? Tell me. So he said, Krishna lives in Vrindavan. Where is this Vrindavan? So he got all the directions about how to go to Vrindavan. And where will I find him? He said, you go at the time of the sunset and you'll see him coming back with the cows. What else could he say? Yes? He wanted to get rid of him. He said, go from my house. The Brahman also didn't have that much faith. So he said, you go and you'll see he comes with cows. And this is how he looks. Yeah, I have heard that. I know how he looks. You told that. I've heard it carefully. So then he set out for Vrindavan. Because the directions were clear, so he didn't need a GPS. He went straight. And he went there and he reached Vrindavan. And then he saw, he identified a place. He said, let me sit on top of the tree and wait for Krishna and Balaram to come back. Because he had talked about two boys. He said he'll come back with another boy. Krishna is dark complexioned and Balaram, his brother, is fair complexioned. So he described the clothing again. So he was waiting. And then suddenly in the distance, he saw those two boys coming. He was overjoyed. He jumped down from the tree and he ran to Krishna. The moment he saw Krishna and his beauty, all his material desires and his contamination disappeared. Just when you put a piece of cotton into the fire, just immediately gets burnt up. So all his material contamination was immediately burnt up. And then he realized, oh, no. I just, who are you? He started asking Krishna. So Krishna was smiling. He said, I know why you came. Krishna was a small boy. He said, I know you came to steal all the jewels I have. He said, no, yes, I know. And then he caught his hand, the man, thief, caught Krishna's hand. Then Krishna was playing like an ordinary boy. No, my mother, I'm afraid of you. So he said, don't worry, I won't harm you, just wait. So Krishna smiled and said, okay, you want my jewels, right? He said, I'll give it to you. Take all my jewels. So he started taking off his jewels and giving it to the thief. So then the thief said, won't your mother be angry if you give all your jewels to me? Yeah, don't worry, I'm a bigger thief than you. He said, really? Yeah, what do you steal? He asked. He said, well, I steal butter, I steal people's, the gopis' clothes, and I steal many things. But most importantly, I'm called Chitta Chor. Chitta means consciousness of the heart, and Chor means a thief. So I steal everybody's heart. And now I've stolen your heart. So I'm a bigger thief than you. So this man was mesmerized. He was just standing there. And then Krishna ran away from there. And he was just standing there. And he went all the way back to that Brahman. He found suddenly that he had a big, bag of clothes. And incidentally, he found, based on the descriptions he had heard from the Brahmana, he had heard carefully, that one ornament was missing on Krishna's body. So Krishna, where is that ornament? So he was able to point out, so you can see how carefully he had heard. Anyway, now he had this bag. He went back to that Brahmana. The Brahmana, oh my God, he's come again. He said, now what do you want? He said, I found Krishna. The Brahmana didn't believe him. What do you mean found Krishna? So he said, yes, and this is the bag he gave me. And he took out the ornaments. The Brahmana was stunned. He said, you got this from Krishna, or have you stolen it from some jeweler's shop? He said, no, I got it. Krishna gave it. So what happened? He explained the whole thing. And he said, you come with me. So the Brahmana said, all right, I will come. The Brahmana was now trembling, and he was really in a bad shape. He didn't know what was going on. And then he went with that Brahmana. He didn't believe it. He didn't believe that Krishna and Balaram would actually come. That's something for the books. It doesn't actually happen. That's what the Brahmana was thinking. So then they sat on the tree, and they were waiting and waiting. The thief was serene and confident and overjoyed because he knew Krishna Balaram would come. But the Brahmana was anxious. And then the thief, the former thief, cried out, there they come, there they come. And they jumped down. He said, where? He was not able to see. And then Krishna Balaram came, and they were talking to the thief. And the Brahmana was not able to see Krishna and Balaram. So he said aloud to Krishna Balaram, oh my dear lords, what is it, what sin have I done that I don't get your darshan even though you're in front of me, but this thief gets your darshan? So Krishna replied, first, he heard with rapt attention all my narrations and my descriptions. And second, he believed them to be true completely because he had faith, whereas you are only a professional. You were speaking just for your livelihood. You thought it's just another story and it's a way for you to get your dakshina, get a little donation. But he didn't think it was just a story. He actually he believed it as reality, and it is. So therefore I have appeared before him. So what is the moral of the story? We have to hear with faith and attentively. Then Krishna will also appear before us one day. We should not be too much in a hurry to see Krishna. We should be more eager to hear about Krishna. Then Krishna will manifest. It's almost time, but I have 5 seconds. I'll quickly tell. The famous story of Rukmini. Rukmini had never met Krishna or seen him. She developed pure love for him simply by hearing about him. Similarly, the wives of the Yajnik Brahmanas who lived in the border between Vrindavan and Mathura, they had also never seen Krishna before, but they had heard about him, his beauty, his mercy, his pastimes, his so on. So even before they saw Krishna, they were already pure devotees just by hearing about him. So hearing about Krishna is more important than seeing Krishna. When it comes to seeing Krishna, we do that in the temple by taking darshan of the deities. And even then, to appreciate the deity properly and better, we have to hear. Then our Krishna consciousness and our life will become perfect. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanande. So thank you very much to all the organizers of the program, and heartfelt thanks to all of you who came and participated in this satsang program. Thank you. Hare Krishna.